Ashland stands on the edge today. City coffers sit nearly empty, yet demand for new homes and jobs keeps climbing. Citizens want places to live, businesses need spaces to grow, and councilors promise both without raising taxes. Can Ashland expand fast enough to fix its budget without destroying its character? To find out, we need to open the waterfront for development, take a targeted loan to stay afloat, balance aesthetics and basics, and by the end of today's episode, Ashland either stabilizes its books and earns a bit of breathing room, or slides deeper into debt and collapses. Before we get started, I want to fix the traffic issue. The fix is honestly super simple. We're going to convert this into a 3-lane asymmetric road so drivers have a proper turning lane. Actually, our wide sidewalk parking lot road is making the sidewalks appear a bit janky, so I'm going to use Road Builder for this. Selecting the road, we'll add 1 lane, plus we'll reduce the width of the sidewalks, hoping to match what we currently have and create something that looks semi-realistic. And I think that's perfectly fine. Our next fix is we're going to use traffic and just control it a bit, clean up some of the intersections, remove unsafe turns. I hate the U-turns. It makes things so frustrating. It can really clog up your traffic, but when we remove the U-turns from a majority of our roads, we'll get a much cleaner flow. Looking over here too, I think it makes sense to turn this into a 3-lane asymmetric road, just give them 1 more turning lane, and then we'll remove the traffic light, and we'll set this short road to be a stop. And then the main street is just priority. So I cleaned up a bunch of the intersections and traffic's definitely flowing a bit better now. I'm going to put this on pause because we're losing too much money. Originally my plan was to buy a tile and build a proper dirty industrial park, something kind of gritty and gross. It would bring in a lot of jobs and it would be easy for the residents to commute there, but the budget says otherwise. So we need to stabilize the city's finances. To do this, we're going to expand the city's road network down by the waterfront, create some valuable higher-end residential and office spaces, and start nudging up the density just a tiny bit. I don't want to go too crazy here. We're still a small town. It doesn't make sense to make massive buildings. So what I want to do right now is I want to main the waterfront road, and I want it to curve along the shoreline, giving us a really nice foundation for any future development. And in the future, I want to continue that shoreline road and have it kind of go around. I'm planning to branch smaller roads back towards the main arterials. That way traffic will flow more naturally and it won't all bottleneck into one spot. In terms of layout, I'm aiming for smaller, tighter blocks. That should make the area really walkable, keep the streets feeling lively without being too cramped. And I'm also thinking about reserving some space between the main arterial road and the waterfront for some parks and some green areas. I really want to make sure that at least a piece of the waterfront stays scenic and doesn't feel too crowded with traffic or buildings. It's a place where you can go, you can sit on a bench, you can hang out and relax, and really you can just look at the water. For zoning, the plan is to go for a mix of mid-density, low-density, and some offices. I haven't had any commercial demand for a while now, so I'm hoping that fixes. And I feel like I'm over-explaining, but really, I just want to balance it with smooth roads, good flow, strong walkability, some beautiful views of the water, and I really don't want too heavy of a grid. I want it to feel a little bit more natural and real. Now I'll use Move It, deselect everything except for nodes, and then I'll select all the nodes, bring them all up to the same height, and that way we'll have a nice level road along the water. And looking at this area, the first thing I noticed is that we have a good amount of flat land to work with, which is why we're working this land first. Since we're not fighting against big hills or crazy terrain changes, I don't have a ton of terraforming here. I'll just tidy it up a little, basically just a smidge, because I still want to respect the natural lay of the land. But I find in City Skylines too, if you force the terrain too much to fit your roads, you usually end up with something that looks really janky later on. So it's better to work with it, not against it. Now thinking about the grid layout, I want this part of the city to feel walkable, connected, and scenic, especially since it's right by the water, but it's not too close. But I also want it to feel really compact, because it's not close. So the plan here is to go with blocks that are 8 units deep, 16 units wide, and the reason for that is 8 is deep enough to keep blocks compact and easy to walk across without feeling stretched out, and 16 units wide gives us enough space to fit a lot of different building types in there without feeling too cramped, and it gives us a little bit of space as well for landscaping. It's pretty similar to the grid we used earlier in the city, but I'm tightening it up just a bit because I want this area to feel a little more upscale and vibrant, almost like a small downtown extension, but still fitting that early growth phase we're in. And I'm not getting too picky yet with curves or detailing. The goal really for right now is just to get the basic road network laid out. And the way I'm doing this is just by creating separate grids based off of our 8x16 pattern and then connecting them up. And what I think that does is creates a very clean transition that doesn't feel too gritty, but still looks nice. And it's starting to come together now. I want to add a bit of variation, break up some of the blocks. The challenge that we'll have doing something like this is zoning becomes a pain in the butt, but it can look really nice if it's done right. And the challenge I'm going to have is following the shoreline while making it look nice. I find that can be a bit challenging from time to time. And we got a little bit of a grade here. It really shouldn't be a problem. I'll turn on ground level and slope roads, and then I'll just continue following the grid. And to do that, I'll create a second one here, and then I'll just curve into that road. The length might be a bit long, but we'll deal with what we got. Right here is where it'll end for now. In the future, we're going to extend it further down the shoreline, and we'll also get an interchange coming in. Unfortunately, we don't have the funds for that yet, so that's a future project. All right, speaking of funds, yeah, we're broke. So at this point, we're going to have to take out a loan to keep the momentum going. I'll take out 100,000 for now. Nothing too crazy, just enough to keep building out the road network, get the city moving forward. It's definitely going to push us further into the red for a little while, but that's actually part of the bigger plan here. By investing in our new infrastructure now, we're building better roads, we're laying out new neighborhoods, we're setting up our future zoning, we're making it so that we can earn things later, therefore turning it around. If we do this right, the new residential, the new office, the new commercial zoning, it should start filling in really quickly, and that'll stabilize our budget, hopefully by the end of this episode. All right, so here's what I'm thinking, and tell me if I'm crazy. I'm planning one big connector, maybe even closer to an arterial, but not really, that loops around the whole outside of the city. So it'll wrap around the whole area, climb the hill with a retaining wall where needed, and then loop back to tie into our major connector, basically creating a full ring road early, just on a smaller, more manageable scale, sort of. So after thinking it through, here's the plan that I've decided on so far. We'll have our main connector run all the way across the right side of the tile, staying relatively straight. Then we'll fold the road back towards the city edge, staying closer to the boundary of the map. I want this road to reconnect cleanly back into our original network. And one really important thing here is slope. I want to make sure that as we climb or descend around the hill, we keep the grade under 5%. I don't want any crazy roller coaster style roads messing up traffic flow or making things look weird later on. And in real world cities, especially ones that have to deal with heavy traffic, trucks and buses, steep roads cause all kinds of problems. Vehicles start slowing down a lot more going uphill, or they're braking harder going downhill. That causes traffic jams, accidents, and just makes everything so much less efficient. For public transit, especially buses, it's even worse. Steep slopes mean you either have slower service, or you have a whole bunch more fuel usage, or it's harder routes for pedestrians. All right, rant over. Rant and tangent officially done. Right here, this is going to be the retaining wall. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to curve this up nice and gentle, stay under our 5%. I'm going to connect back up to that connector. Now I want to finish up a little bit of our grid, and we'll do a nice smooth little curve here. I think it'll look a bit funky, but it makes for a different city. Using Move It, I'm going to deselect everything except for nodes. Going to use the drag tool, hold shift, and just select all of them. Then I'll align it to this node right here, and that'll drop it down. It's looking good. So this will allow us to add our retaining wall, which will also do a little bit of grading as well, just to make it look really nice. All right, that's looking good so far. Now what I want to do is run a frontage road along the bottom of the tile. So I'll grab right about here, send this all the way down into the existing road. And we're going to actually delete our current setup here and configure it in a way that works better with this road right here, like that. Then we'll add a connection for these two roads, trying to get that 90-degree connection. Now I'll extend this road as a reminder to myself for the future. I'll connect these two up. Okay, now the block length here is insane. Way too long, and it needs to be improved. I'm going to run a road about 16 units in. I'll use the complex curve tool. Try and get as close to 16 as I can. There we go. Using that, I'll just make a straight through connection. Now I'm going to add our key wall along the outside of this road. It'll give the waterfront a nice clean edge, make everything feel a lot more intentional, and help define the boundary between the road and the water. Plus, it just looks way better than leaving the terrain raw, especially for a city that's starting to grow and urbanize like this, even if it would be expensive. Now this right here looks a bit awkward, so I want to add a road to allow more development to happen. Space for shops, or maybe houses, or offices. Something to break this up a bit so it's not so open. I'm going to start placing some row homes along the waterfront here. For this area, I'm specifically using the US Southwestern Region Pack. The reason I'm choosing row homes is because they're a perfect fit for what I'm trying to create here. They're dense enough to really maximize the value of this waterfront space without jumping straight into like a giant apartment building or a tower. You know, the city is growing, but not at that scale yet. Alright, so I've placed a few buildings down, just trying to get a feel for what this waterfront area might end up looking like. I also went ahead and created a district now that we've unlocked the ability to do so. There are two reasons I wanted a district, and it's probably not the reason you're thinking of assigning services. But first, I want to keep an eye on how many households we're actually creating, really just to check to see whether our city's going to collapse financially or not. And second, I wanted to name it. Now listen, I already know some of you are going to absolutely hate the name I came up with. That's valid, and trust me, you do deserve better. So if you got a better idea, feel free to suggest it. I am fully prepared to pretend this never happened. So we're in Ash County, right? It's the city of Ashland. In this little waterfront neighborhood, I thought maybe we could call it a shore, because it's near a shore. Yeah, that's the level of creativity you're dealing with here. Anyways, with my awful puns out of the way, I'm going to add in some paths. Those areas will be designated as temporary parks. I'll add in some office, commercial, and residential zoning. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie, I really struggled with this part. I spent way too long trying to find the right kind of building for this waterfront district. I didn't want anything super tall that would block the views, but I also didn't want it to feel empty or underbuilt. After a lot of back and forth and probably way too much staring at Find It, I ended up settling on these small apartment buildings. They're compact enough to fit the feeling that I'm going for, but still dense, but not overwhelming. And to make sure they don't randomly level up into massive skyscrapers later, I went ahead and locked them at level 1. And we are now ready to hit play and see everything fill in. I swapped some of the buildings on Heather Street to front Heather Street and be office and commercial, just because I figured it'd be a nice little shake up and we need the jobs anyways. While everything's zoning in, I'm going to fix the zoning along these streets and then add some in. I'll add a small pedestrian path along the back of the offices. Now that all our low residential is filtered on the right, I'm going to add back the residential zoning to these roads. And for this one, I don't want any residential on Vermont Street, I believe it is. And then we'll just add it back for all the other houses. Now I really wanted this to be commercial, but it's just not coming in. We do not have the demand for it. So we're going to swap it to office. Before we do, we're going to add in some paths just to break up the zoning a bit. And I kept getting massive office buildings, and I didn't really want 6x6 office buildings in our tiny little city. So I broke up the zoning a bit by using parking. It looks awful, so I'm going to ignore it for now until we get the detailing. In the meantime, I'm looking at this giant plot, and I'm wondering, where are all the buildings? So we didn't zone it because if we did, it would look awful. So I'm going to plop them. Right now, it's going to be anything under a width of 4 and under a depth of 4. I don't want it to be too close to Vermont Street because we want to maintain our right of way just in case we want to upgrade the road in the future. And I'm just going to plop all these southwestern houses. Now, one thing I think would be essential for this area is having pedestrian paths, at least to the middle, because this is a really long block. Now, I'd love to add them, but we're negative 7,530. So we're on our way to getting better, but we still got a long way to go. Now for this little section, I want to turn it into a quickly built, pretty rough looking office area. It's counterintuitive, but the reasoning behind it is tied directly to where the city is at right now. So we're running out of money. The city's leadership, if you can even call them that at this point, is basically scrambling to bring in any kind of business they can. And it's really less about careful planning and more about survival. So what ends up happening here is they rush together this awkward little block of offices. It's not what they wanted. It's not some beautiful downtown expansion, but it's really what they could help fund. So they're just trying to throw down whatever developments they can just to keep the lights on and stabilize the budget. But it doesn't stop there. Because the pressure kept building, the city started allowing high density residential zoning too, even in places that don't really make sense. So right now, across from the offices, we have these low rent apartment blocks going up. They weren't part of the original plan. They're just the result of a desperate city making desperate choices, cramming people and businesses wherever there's space, hoping it'll be enough to keep things afloat. Although I'm not entirely sure if you could even call these high density, they look more like medium density apartment buildings to me. One of the cool things is they do level up to be really nice, so I think that'll weave into our narrative a little bit better. And while I was letting things play out, we unlocked the UK medium petrol station, I believe. And so we're going to place that down. The interesting thing about gas stations is they do have an effect on commercial demand in a positive way. So this might actually help us. We're going to place it right here on the outskirts of the city. We're going to clean up our surfaces just a bit. And now we'll add in just a bit more residential and a bit more office. Going to place some 2x2s along this road right here. They're small, they'll fit into the space really well. And if you're wondering why some of the roofs are black, I used recolor to adjust a few of them. And we have unlocked our second gas station, which I'm going to place down on essentially the opposite side of the city. And we're boomtown. This is perfect. Okay, this is actually what we needed. We just got 100,000, which removes us from negatives and brings us up to a positive, healthy balance of 95,000, even though we're losing 2,000 an hour. So that's great. I'm just going to fix the surface here, and then we're going to add a park because I have a feeling that our citizens' happiness is just being impacted by this so much. And maybe that's why we're losing out on our demand when really everything should be skyrocketing. For our first park, I'm going to put a nice pocket park right beside these offices. It's going to tie the area together, and it's going to give people a place to sit and eat and do all the wonderful things that they want to do when they're not working because they're on break. Okay, so I swapped the weird gravel path to more of a tile. I'm just moving this building to get it in a bit of a better space. This will look much better once we finish our detailing, but for now it's going to look a bit rough. And once the city's finances started to recover just a little bit, they came back to the office space to try and fix some of the mess they had rushed earlier. To make the area feel a bit more polished, they decided to add some small pocket parks, a few green spaces, trees, maybe give it a bit of life and make it seem a bit more intentional. On paper, it sounded like a great idea, but in practice, it didn't go over so well. The businesses that had moved in started complaining almost immediately, not about the landscaping, but the lack of parking. They argued that their customers and employees had nowhere convenient to park, and that the city should have focused on basic infrastructure instead of trying to make the place look pretty. So after spending money to build the parks, the city had to spend even more money to bulldoze them and replace them with parking lots. But honestly, for me, this is kind of a way of admitting that I'm not sure these parks actually make sense here, just given the fact that we have very little parking in the entire city, maybe a much smaller park. But I'll think about that a bit more in the future and see if I want to make that change. Something I really want to get in here is a proper park for a shore. They really need it at this point in time. They have very little amenities, and I think right here, right in front of the water, will be a great spot. I'm going to clean up the surfaces just a bit. Oops, I didn't mean to replace it. Okay, I guess I'll just replace it and then replace it back to normal. And funny enough, that actually fixes it. And I wonder if there's anything that could... No, the more I look at these, the more I think nothing really fits here. Like, this is a basketball park. You know, this is a kid's park. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it cheap. So we'll stretch these surfaces back out. And over here, we'll do the exact same thing. There's that little bit of grade there. I'm not too worried about it, but I know it's going to look a bit janky. And yeah, I think this is not going to tie together the way I want it to, even with detailing. So I'm just going to run the parking lot road through there. It'll be a one-way, just enough to fit. And then we didn't do anything too crazy here. We just added some basic small pocket parks. Now I'm going to run some paths down here by the gas station, and we'll zone up some more office. Now before I get into detailing, there's one easy thing that I want to do. I want to change the age of the trees in all of the southwestern to mature. It'll save us on some tree work, and honestly, it looks really good. Most of the southwestern assets have lots of trees baked into them. As I'm coming back over here, I see a really good spot to put a pocket park. It's a no-brainer. Give people a place to sit, clean up some of that awful parking use. I also thought this would be a great place for, I'm going to butcher this name, Imakandi. I think that's what it's called. Please let me know if I'm wrong. And the Church and Inn restaurant. I think they're going to fit in really nicely here. And with a little bit of detailing, it'll really feel like somewhere you'd actually want to come. All right, so we're finally starting to see a bit of commercial demand, and I definitely want to take advantage of that. I want to mix this into the city more as we keep growing, and honestly, I would have loved to place more in the first place, but at the same time, I don't want to wait 84 years for commercial demand to increase. So what I'm aiming for here with this mixed use is something that feels intentional, something that looks put together without a bunch of random gaps or awkward empty spaces. And because we have that weird zoning on this road, that's going to happen whether we like it or not. So I'm going to try and nudge them around a little bit, try and push them in or pull them out, just enough to make it feel more natural. Doesn't have to be perfect, just cohesive enough. So you look at it and you're like, okay, this is a place that could actually exist. You're not stretching reality too far. I also want to lock all of these to level 1. I honestly should be doing this with a lot of different buildings, but I feel like I'm forgetting. Right here, I've settled on these southwestern mixed use apartment buildings. I'm going to let some of them level up and I'll let some of them stay the same. Right now they're all the same level, so it's all the same height. I want one or two that kind of peaks up just a little bit more. It's also starting to bug me how everything's the same height, so I'm going to place this in here, put it right in between the two buildings. I do want some variation. I don't like when everything's the same height, but also at the same time these level up and they become skyscrapers. Exaggerating a bit there, they don't become skyscrapers, but still, I want something that feels tame and small. That's why I wish we had more low-rise, medium-density buildings. We're getting pretty close to having everything zoned out now. Most of the buildings are in, and honestly, I think they're starting to come together really nicely. I'm just going to sprinkle in a little more low residential around the core of where most of our low residential was. And we need the job, so I'm wondering if I can squeeze a office somewhere along here. It looks like I can. I'll have to use anarchy because there'll be a conflict with the path. But honestly, I'm not worried about the path. We can use move it to move the path. And I think that's working out well. The more jobs, the merrier. Now, the city has a tendency to overcorrect. So all that parking they added for the office park, if you can call it that, is now being also added to this road as well. Their thoughts are that they can add it for the high residential, if you can call the high residential that, and it'll provide more opportunities for parking for the employees and the citizens. I've been sick for about a day and a half now, and so I thought we could take a break so I could show you how I feel inside right now. Okay, now at the back of the city, we're going to have a little bit of parking, and really what I'm saying with this parking is fine. We get it. We know you have to drive. We know it's important, but still, it's going to be all the way back here, away from all of other things. Plus, we have a big office right there. It looks like a kind of like an old paper factory almost. I love it. Also, we want to get some in here as well, but we're a bit tight on space, and honestly, these office buildings are massive. And I can't find a good enough parking road that fits here. So I think I'll probably cut down some of the space of the office by going back either one or two tiles. I think reasonably we can put, a medium parking lot right there, or a small parking lot right there. I think that'll do just fine. Ooh, we're a busy town, milestone 7, and we got money. Oh my God, I totally forgot to check. We're in the green, aren't we? Finally, we have money. I haven't even realized this entire time. I've just been like zoned in. It is so nice to have money, which means we can spend again. And really, that's what this episode was about. It's about building the foundation so that we could actually do things we want to do. Purchase tiles, expand, grow. Now, I absolutely want to get this in. So I've been looking around at a couple spots, and to me, this one just seems like it might be the best. There might be a grading problem with the parking lot, but we can make it work. I think it's a really beautiful asset. I love how much detail there is in it. Now, I'm going to stop letting myself get distracted, and I'm going to bulldoze all of these. We're going to pretend they never existed, and we're going to zone in something just a bit smaller. We'll take it back 2 tiles. This will give us way more room to actually either put in a parking lot or a pedestrian facility, which is something I'll definitely want to include here. I don't want this just to be a parking lot. In fact, I think I'll take a lot of time in the detailing section and actually do something a little bit more special with it. And all things considered, I'm really happy with how this turned out. It feels like a place people would actually live, that people would spend time in. We got a little bit more detailing to do, so we're going to finish that up. All right, so about an hour and a half after detailing, I think we're finally at a good stopping point. We started this episode in survival mode. The budget wasn't red, the city was barely holding it together, and we pivoted. We built some new road networks, we added high value housing and zoning, we created some walkable grids, and tried to bring in just enough growth to stop the bleeding. Then came the office park, some quick zoning decisions, and a few too many desperate compromises. And yeah, maybe a park or two that didn't work out, but we kept building, kept tweaking, kept adjusting, and now after all the struggles, the city's actually starting to feel real. Not perfect, not master planned, but alive. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching, seriously. And if you got name ideas, ideas for fixes, or just want to roast my park placement, feel free to drop a comment. I read them all. I'll catch you in the next one, where hopefully we spend a little less time placing bushes and a little more time growing the city.